Tyler with TJack Survival and Survival Dispatch. What are we talking about today? Well, survival priorities, or as I like to call it, what should I do first? So stay tuned. So let's talk about survival priorities. First off, what is survival? Well, don't die, okay? We would prefer to prevail, but we got to start out sometimes with don't die. So once we have that baseline established, survivalists don't die. Hope you got that one. Now, having said that, the next logical question should be, what's going to kill me first? Okay, well, that's situation dependent. And we need a little more knowledge in order to decide what's going to kill me first. So that's why we use the rule of threes. The rule of threes is a guideline, not a steadfast rule. Now, what are we really trying to do in a survival situation? I'm going to steal a line from my friend Justin Vitito, and it goes like this. Well, I want to get home and get tacos, right? Either you get out of here and you get home and eat tacos, or you find a way to survive until you can get home and eat tacos. That's what survival is. Not to be confused with primitive living. Primitive living is, how can I go out and stay out? Which happens to be really handy in a survival situation. But the two really are different. So once we understand that, the next question is going to be, again, what's going to kill me first? If we understand the rule of threes, which goes something like this, I can go 3 seconds in a gunfight without security. If I'm in an austere environment, maybe some of my old military environment, ammunition, weapons, super important. If I'm not in that environment, then they become hunting tools. If I can't hunt or I don't have one with me, it's just not an option. So 3 seconds without security, 3 minutes without air. If I'm in an airplane and it hit water, do I spend time, grabbing my sleeping bag and grabbing my kit? No, I get out, right? Survivals don't die. So sometimes get out of the fire, get out of the water, get out of the situation is more important than get my kit, get my special tools, my whatever. Having said those two things, we start getting a little more pragmatic. The next level is shelter. Shelter is probably the most important and the most overlooked and the biggest fail that people have. It starts with the clothing. Right now, the clothing I'm wearing and this hat is sheltering me from that very hot sun because I prepared in advance. That's one thing you can do to mitigate a survival situation, which is really just risk avoidance or risk mitigation, and that is to prepare properly in advance. Whether that's the right kind of gear or the right education, this is the most important thing. Now, the reason we talk about shelter is because you can go about 3 hours without shelter in inclement weather. I'm fine right now. I'm probably not going to freeze to death tonight. It does get very cold, and I am going to suffer a little bit tonight if I don't have a fire or some sort of shelter, but I'm not going to die. Now, if it was wintertime in this exact location, and I had these clothes on without fire or shelter, I would be dead by morning. So that's why they say you can go 3 hours in inclement weather without shelter. The next level is 3 days without water. Very good. That's kind of subjective. If you're in the middle of the Sahara and it's insanely hot, you might go only 4 hours. If you're in a situation where you started out well hydrated and you're not sweating heavy, you're not really moving, you might go 4 days, maybe even a week. But as a guideline, it's 3 days without water. The next level is 3 weeks without food. Now, there are people that have gone up to 40 days on just water and vitamins in survival situations and suffered no long-term effects. There's one man that I researched that had over 1,000 pounds of extra weight on him that went 365 days on water and vitamins. Do I recommend that? Absolutely not. Just like I said in the beginning, it's kind of subjective. But for the average person, 3 weeks is about as far as you're going to go without food before you are going to have some serious problems. One more that I like to add to the back of that is 3 months without companionship. Anyone who's seen Alone, you watch some of the best, most world-class survivalists go about 3 months and they kind of break down mentally. A lot of times they have food and they just can't handle being alone anymore. So it is important to get out of that survival situation or have some sort of an exit plan, like a rescue fire or something else. So now that we understand the rule of 3's, we can start logically looking at our situation. If I was in a survival situation right now, what would I do? So as you can kind of see where I'm at, I'm in the desert, right? Well, what's gonna kill me first? Nobody's trying to shoot at me, not a problem. I haven't wrecked an airplane, not in the water. So 3 seconds isn't an issue, 3 minutes isn't an issue. 3 hours? You know, maybe if I sit out here in the sunlight and it gets hot, that might become an issue, but right now it's not a problem, right? So I think the next thing is gonna be 3 days without water. Well, I've got a creek over there and I might have to get into traveling along the creek or overlanding and looking for water pockets. And then I'm gonna have to start looking for a way to boil the water, a way to eat the food. So logically, my shelter's covered, my oxygen's covered, I'm not gonna die. I need to get water, fire, and shelter, right? Maybe not in that order, right? It kind of depends. Now, if I have food first, which a lot of people will do, it takes extra water to digest that food. So my 3-day window is starting to shrink if I'm eating food when I don't have water. So you really shouldn't eat food unless you have water, because you can do 30+ days without food, but you can only do so long without water. So realistically, one of the first things you should look for is water. And if you can't find that, you're just gonna spend the night, fire and shelter. But again, your short-term thing really needs to be water first, accompanied by shelter, accompanied by fire in this situation. Now, if I was in an inclement weather situation, the first thing needs to be shelter. Whether I build a shelter or I make a fire, which is radiant heat, that's still shelter. The reason why we do so much fire in survival situations and in survival training is because fire gives us heat, friendship, keeps the animals away, it keeps the parasites, ticks, mosquitoes off of us, it cooks our food, it boils our water. There's just 1,000 different things. Fire is super important, right up there with the water. I would argue probably the 3 most important things: fire, water, and shelter. Once we get those things in abundance, we start looking for food. And at all times, if we can be rescued, we get rescued. Because remember, if we get out of the situation and go back and eat tacos, it's a win.